My name is Henrik Nolmark. I'm the director of Volvo Research and Educational Foundations. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to welcome you to this VREF Next Gen Research Forum, which is in the series of several that we have been planning this semester. So the title is Urban Mobility Under Stress, Climate Cost and Infrastructure Inequalities, which is a kind of dramatic title, including words such as stress, inequalities, climate, which is sort of a neutral word, but these days it means a lot of drama, actually. So we will have very interesting presentations, and in a minute I will hand over to the two moderators. We have Shahan Ahmed, who has replaced Nisha Nair, who had to cancel in the last minute. Thank you, Shahan, for stepping in, and also Kwame Odame. So I will soon hand over to both of you to introduce the topic and to introduce the speakers. I just wanted to say that this is part of VREF's initiative to support younger researchers and students, the Next Generation Scholars Initiative, which we have now quite a good number of colleagues who have signed up as part of that network and community. I mean, we are very happy to host that. Just before handing over, wanted to check with you, Karin, is there any technical information that I should give? Well, the chat is open. Please feel free to say hello in the chat and tell us where you're calling in from today. It's always interesting to see, and during the webinar, feel free to comment or pose questions, etc., etc.
Yes, and please keep muted while not addressed as a speaker today.
Yes. So with that, I'm very pleased to hand over to our two moderators today, Shahan and Kwame. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nolmark, for that introduction. As you rightly said, today's session will be led by myself and Shahan. And so we want to begin the session with some updates on VREF Next Gen activities, and I'll humbly call Shahan to give us some updates on all Next Gen related activities, just for the purpose of the house, before we start with our first presentation. So Shahan, over to you.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon here from Pakistan. I'm Shahan Ahmed. I'm an urban planner, currently a PhD student at Rutgers School of Planning and Public Policy. My research intersects transitions from formalization, standardization, or modernization. In particular, I'm looking at the transformation of urban mobility in Peshawar here, so the interaction between informal transit and the formal transit. A little bit about updates from the NextGen VREF's NextGen program. We are two facilitators each for ISM, which is informal and shared mobility, walking, and then two for MAC, which is mobility and access for Africa. What we usually do for each year, and then we have specific events happening each year. We do tools of trade workshop. For example, last year we had one on publications. We do these online forums, the Share Your Science Forum, and this is the first one for this year. We also have in-person workshops or panel discussions whenever there's a summit or a conference we can gather at. Last year we did one in Gothenburg where there was a lot of the next-gen scholars who shared their work. You can also, I'm gonna drop some links in the chat. You can also visit the website and webpage for our programs, and also our LinkedIn page for VREF. You can reach out if you want have anything that you want to ask about to me or Kwame or any one of us. We have Maria Jose, for the walking program. Nisha unfortunately couldn't join us. She had a last-minute emergency. And we have Ubaid somewhere here, who is also one of the facilitators for ISM, and I'm the other one. I forgot to mention that. Kwame and Nisha are, sorry, Kwame and Pascaline. I'm not sure if Pascaline has joined, but Pascaline and Kwame look at the MAC program. So yeah, please reach out to any of us if you have any questions or ideas that you want to share or want to connect to the larger community. A little bit about what we have planned for this year. Of course, this is our first Share Your Science Forum. We're going to have at least 3 more and maybe 4 more. One of them is going to be a Tools of Trade workshop. So keep tuned, and that can we're gonna communicate more on that, but it's something we have planned for this year. Just a little bit about the timeline. We're gonna do one in June, one in August, one in September, and one in November. You can one of the links for this that I shared in the chat is for the LinkedIn page of VREF. So please connect to that so that you can be updated every time we have something like this. We also have something in work, some projects that we're working on. You might have seen something come across your email or your feed. The Mentor Hub program is something we're working on to provide peer-to-peer and mentor-to-peer, mentor-to-mentee relationship through that program. We're also working on regional specific forums. For example, we're working on one that would be a South Asian forum where young researchers from South Asia can link and share their work. And we're going to plan to have more on them, more of these region-specific ones. We're also working on handbooks or guides on various areas of skill development. This is something that is in incubation right now, but it's something really exciting. A guide or a handbook on publications or methods. Other than that, I can share something specific on ISM. We have the global convening this year in October in Bangkok, and 1 or 2 days of that, or 2 or 3 days of that would be also specific to NextGen activities, particularly a graduate academy. Kwame, do you have anything specific to share on MAC or walking?
No, not at all. It's fine.
Yes, so this was a lot, I know, but please reach out if you have any questions and follow the pages. We have all the information there too. Thank you. Back to you, Kwame.
Oh, thank you very much for that introduction. So like Nolmark rightly said, today we want to explore 3 different presentations from different parts of the world. And we'll start off our presentation by taking the first one from Kastura. Let me apologize if I don't get your name right. Please forgive me.
Kasturi.
I've already made that clear, and as well as other presenters as well. And Kasuri is presenting on the topic Urban Heat and Transit Equity, Assessing Microclimate and Shade Access at Bus Stops in New York City's High Heat Vulnerability Neighborhoods. A little background on Kasuri. Kasuri is an MSc graduate student in Sustainable Environmental Systems at Pratt Institute with a background in architecture, environmental planning, and sustainable infrastructure. Her work focuses on climate resilience, urban heat mitigation, and using GIS and data analysis to support equitable urban design solutions. Kastori is particularly interested in how environmental data can inform policy and design strategies that improve climate resilience and quality of life in vulnerable urban communities. Kasturi, you have 15 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you for introduction. Can I share my screen?
Please go ahead.
That's why screen is visible properly. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's perfectly fine.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
So, hello everyone. Again, I'm introducing myself. My name is Kasturi. I'm an environmental planner. I recently graduated from Pratt Institute, New York. I completed my master's in sustainable environmental system. And this project I'm presenting is my capstone research, and this project is being developed in collaboration with South Bronx Unite. It's a community-based organization in South Bronx, New York. And here is like quick agenda for today's presentation. So I'll start with project background, research framework, methodology, key findings, and few recommendations. So we are witnessing a global shift in climate patterns driven by climate change affecting cities and communities worldwide. And specifically in New York City, this shift is evident as climate has shifted from humid continental to humid subtropical. And this chart you can see here, which is NPCC projection, which is showing how days over 90 Fahrenheit could rise from baseline of 70 days to 69 per year by 2050 and 108 days per year by 2080. And this temperature rise, it's not same everywhere in NYC because of urban heat island effect. And in this map, you can clearly see the hotspot because of urban heat island effect. And approximately 78 cities population, 78% of cities population experience urban heat island effect, 8 Fahrenheit and higher. On other hand, public transit plays crucial role in mitigating heat risk by reducing greenhouse gas emission, but transit users themselves remain vulnerable to extreme heat. So in New York, approximately 1.4 million New Yorkers rely on bus transit system daily, and they use around 15,000 bus stops across the city. In that, only 20% bus stops have bus shelter, 32% bus stops have tree canopy within 25 feet, and just 1.87 street have dedicated bus lane. So limited dedicated bus lanes means longer wait time, and that also increase exposure to heat. So Transportation Alternatives, it's a community-based organization in New York. So they recently published a report in collaboration with NASA developed, and they have mapped hottest and coolest bus stops across the city. So according to their finding, hottest bus stops are 14.5 Fahrenheit warmer than the coolest one, and those are disproportionately located in low income neighborhood and environmental justice areas. So my research question is how commuter in high heat vulnerability areas to be protected from extreme heat while waiting for the bus, and what design and policy interventions can help that improve their thermal safety. So, Transportation Alternatives also map cities' priority bus route based on their study. So, for my research, I'm focusing on their first priority route, which is BX33. So, on this route, there are like 16 bus stops. In that, 10 are identified as the hottest bus stops. And this map showing why this route is so crucial, because on left hand side you can see heat vulnerability index of this area, and this area has the highest heat vulnerability index in NYC. Also, there is a added burden from poor air quality, elevated PM 2.5, and specifically in this area, asthma rate is also high. So, an extreme heat can cause asthma trigger. So as I mentioned, this project is developed with South Bronx Unite. So they focused on environmental justice, equitable development, public health in this area. They runs various programs and campaigns, including Beat the Heat, air quality initiatives, and this research is built on their ongoing work and community priorities. So why microclimate matters? So this diagram shows why microclimate is the central to the thermal comfort at bus stops. So on left hand side we can see key thermal comfort factors such as air temperature, humidity, wind, mean radiant temperature, and on right hand side we can see that focus shift to street level conditions such as street geometry, tree canopy structure, surface materials, sky view factor, and this we cannot accurately capture through satellite imagery due to limited spatial resolution. So for methodology, I have divided my main research questions into 3 sub-questions. So my first research sub-question is like, what are the microclimate conditions are NYC's bus stops in this specific area, and how they influenced by urban form? So for to answer this question, I have selected five different bus stops on this route based on different characteristics. For example, stop A, there is a bus shelter along with the mature tree canopy, and then there is a stop B where there is no shade, no shelter, but only sitting area. Then stop C, there is only a glass shelter, but there is no shade or shadow from building or like tree. And then again, stop D, there is no shade or shadow. And then stop E, there is only one tree near to the bus stop. So for microclimate study, I have collected a temperature and humidity data using remote sensors during last summer, and I have compared that data with a nearest weather station, which is the LaGuardia Airport weather station, just to see and study the regional urban heat island effect. And then I calculated sky factor and aspect ratio just to understand the street level heat exposure. So higher sky view factors means more open sky that increase and or more direct sun that increase heat stress, where lower sky view factor and higher aspect ratio means more shading and enclosure that creates comfort environment, creating better thermal comfort environment for riders. So to understand how riders actually feel, so I also collected surface temperature readings during last summer around each stop. So for example, you can see in first image, I checked concrete temperature that was around 121 when air temperature was around 88 Fahrenheit. And I also checked the bus shelter roof temperature, and that was around 115 when air temperature was around 92. And this clearly shows that riders are exposed to much higher radiant temperature than the actual air temperature. So I also observed some commuter behaviors during extreme heat last year. So in first image, you can see that commuters are seeking shadow from the bus pole. Then in second, you can see they are standing behind the advertising panel instead of inside the bus shelter. And in third image, you can see commuters are standing behind the shelter because there was a direct sunlight inside the shelter. So I also calculated tree canopy percentage to measure how much natural shade is present in this area, and we can clearly see the difference. So stop A has the highest tree canopy, where stop D and stop E has the lowest one. Similarly, I have calculated permeable surfaces around each stops because with low permeability absorb and radiate more heat, which contribute to higher local temperature. Similarly, I did shadow analysis for all selected bus stops during hottest months of the year, so June, July, August, just to understand how is the shade condition change during the summer, and found that the most of the bus stops had no shade during peak summer. That's why I also map existing cooling infrastructure near each stops, including drinking water station, indoor cooling centers, green infrastructure, or community gardens, just to understand like what are the additional sources are there just to support commuters' thermal comforts. And in this area, there are very few drinking water station and only one indoor cooling center comparatively other areas in New York. So this is the summary for all the key drivers I have analyzed. So darker orange is showing higher heat vulnerability, and light orange is showing better conditions. So stop A with shelter and mature tree performs best with lower temperature difference and better sky view factor, where stop B and D, when there is no tree, no building shade, and exposed pavement, shows worst condition and highest heat exposure, where stop C, stop with only bus shelter, which because of NYC's bus shelter design is a glass sheltered, and like all the material is glass. That's why this structure create greenhouse gas effect. And when it's not paired with overhead shade or like any tree canopy. So here is my second sub question is to what extent NYC's current city policies and design guidelines address this issue. So for this, I have reviewed current some NYC's heat-related programs and design guidelines for, and they together strong multi-agency approach for heat mitigation and urban forestry, but they operate at city level and or neighborhood scale, but they do not directly address shade or cooling at bus stops or nearby area. So I also reviewed their Department of Transportation rules and regulation for landscaping and bus shelter design guidelines. So in that there is no required shade or thermal performance standard for bus stops, and the current clearance rules from planting trees near to the bus stop severely limit placing trees. And as per DOT guidelines, we can place trees behind the shelter, but you can't place on both sides. And this option also limit because the sidewalk is not like the length width is not same everywhere, and clear sidewalk like regulations also limit this option. So I also checked their guidelines for current shelter design. They mainly focus on protection from snow and wind, but lack of guidance on cross ventilation, orientation, or shade requirement. City bench guidelines prioritize access and comfort, but there is no focus on heat risk or required integration with shade. So I also looked tree planting guidelines near bus shelter in other US cities and found that 70% of cities bus route had lower tree density than the non-bus streets. So, and this is largely driven by spacing rules in local guidelines, which require to be set back from utilities, signals, and driveways. So I also analyzed the street tree distribution in NYC and found that about 20% of streets are located on along the bus corridor, and 80% trees are on non-bus corridor. So on the bus routes, street tree distribution is very low. So here is my final research question. So what design policy interventions can improve their thermal comfort in this high heat vulnerability neighborhood? And I answered this question through literature review and expert interviews. So under literature review, I also refer different research papers. Here are some examples of case study I did. These are the examples from other US cities. And these initiatives either led by city agencies or community groups. So in Miami, they have shade program, and they're planting trees near bus stops where planting rules allowed to place the tree. In Phoenix, they have created cool corridor program for the city, and they have added shade standard for transit or like bus stops and subway stations. So in Boston, they are piloting green roof on the bus shelter. In Houston, they are testing solar fans for the bus shelter, and some community projects like bus stop water project. They provide cool water at the bus stop to help to riders cope with the extreme heat during summer. So I also interviewed experts from Department of Transportation, Department of Health, and some experts from South Bronx Unite and urban greening specialists, just to make sure that my recommendations are grounded in feasibility and align with the existing city system. So I have a few recommendations. So there are like mainly two types of recommendations: short-term actions to provide immediate heat relief, and the long-term for system change. So the first recommendation is temporary shade for rapid heat reduction, and there are a lot of individual programs like DOT art, but there is no integration that with the bus stops or with the transit. So we can create a temporary shade structure by using those programs like DOT art, and this can be delivered through simple pilots with the partnership of community-based organization. Here is the second pathway for the same recommendation, focused on community-led living shade. So in Bronze, South Bronx, there's a Moore Garden. They're already working with South Bronx Unite for heat resilient willow dome in the neighborhood. And this concept can be adapted and integrated for bus stops through DOT encroachment permit for community built shade. Then the next short term is reduce dehydration risk and heat releases during extreme heat. So we can pilot pop-up hydration stations paired with wayfindings to nearby cooling centers. We can also increase the number of cooling centers in this area, and this is feasible through NYC emergency management and led by DOT, because they have already established partnership for providing hydration kit, and this they can integrate with bus stops and with the support of community-based organization like South Bronx Unite. The third recommendation is low cost cooling retrofits. So adding heat protective films on the roof of the bus stops because of its glass structure, and also on the side panels, just to reduce greenhouse effect uh, of the glass shelters structure. And the next short term is community-led microclimate monitoring paired with rider comfort surveys. So this can create scientifically grounded evidence that DOT can use for long-term policy and design decision. The next long-term recommendation is about safely adding trees directly into bus stop zone where spacing guidelines allows. So to introducing so in NYC. Subways are underground, so that also limit placing trees. So we can introduce like planters like this where subway limits this planting option. Then the next long-term goal is integrate heat resiliency in all future bus stops and in future street furniture RFP. So this is a comp proposal for DOT's cool corridor program, and they have suggested green roof and a fan for the shelter. But future updates should be required performance-based thermal metrics such as minimum shade percentage, improved skyway factor, and aspect ratio and cool surfaces in waiting area. And this is my final recommendation. So there are a lot of initiatives are going in NYC for green expanding green infrastructure, and so this recommendation is to integrate bus stops into that broader neighborhood cooling network by combining water access, permeable surfaces, green infrastructure. For example, here at Stop D, there is a green infrastructure site next behind the compound wall, and simply placing trees over there can cast shadow, and that can protect commuters from the heat exposure. And so this is like three phase roadmap for all the recommendations. So first is for tactical relief, second is for policy integration for next upcoming years, and then next is phase 3 is for long term transformation by including cooling into shelters RFP and creating citywide cooling network. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for that presentation. I think it's quite insightful. We look at the whole issue about climate resilience from the perspective of people who actually wait at bus stops, and it's quite interesting how you put it. We'll then move on to have our discussant in the name of Dominic Edem-Hoto, who is a researcher and a lecturer at the Department of Geography and Resource Development at the University of Ghana. Dominic's research interests span urban transportation and mobility, and also focuses on disability issues and governance in Ghana. At the moment, Dominic holds a BSc in Geography and Regional Planning from the University of Cape Coast, and both a master's and a PhD in Geography and Resource Development from the University of Ghana. So Dominic, you have 5 minutes for the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kwame. And we also want to thank Kasturi for this insightful presentation. A lot of work has gone into this capstone of yours, and we are thankful for it. So your study speaks directly to an intersection of a number of concepts. There's climate change in there, there is infrastructure design, right? and there's also something on social equity. And this is
Yes.
interesting. And these are central discussions that are very important when it comes to urban mobility debates globally, right? So I'd like to highlight some three aspects of your work that I find very compelling, right? So first of all, your study brings a strong climate justice lens, right, towards public transport infrastructure, right? Because um, your study expands the concept of transit or transport equity, right? Beyond merely availability, accessibility, and service provision. And you show that thermal exposure while even waiting at the bus stop in itself is an equity issue, right? How thermally
Yeah.
exposed are these riders who are waiting? That in itself is an equity issue. So the climate justice lens is pretty strong, and I like that. And it is even worse for people who are already belonging to the vulnerable groups, like persons with disabilities, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a good one. Secondly, I also want to appreciate your methodological integration. Your methods were so rigorous. You combined microclimate analysis with spatial and some behavioral approaches, also how you even use the sky view factor and the aspect ratio. So this provides many layers of understanding how urban form in itself produces heat exposure. And
Yeah.
I'll commend you for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thirdly, your study also effectively links infrastructure to lived experience. Your observational insights, right, such as commuters seeking shade behind the poles or
Yeah.
shelters, highlight a critical gap between infrastructure provision and the actual usability of these infrastructures, right?
Yes.
Sometimes these are overlooked when it comes to transport planning, right? So these are compelling things from your work. I would like to just leave you with some two brief reflections. First of all, your work suggests a shift from infrastructure presence to infrastructure performance. And I agree because it's not enough to just provide bus stops or
Yeah.
shelters. The key question is whether they actually perform under climate stress, right?
Yes.
For
Yes.
example, shelters may be available, but may fail thermally because the shade may be insufficient or poorly positioned, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we can ask ourselves a question. Should cities begin to adopt thermal performance standards for transit infrastructure? We can discuss that later on. And the second,
Yeah.
your study also opens up questions around the temporal dynamics of heat exposure. How does heat exposure vary across different times of the day and different seasons? And how can this inform a more targeted, time-sensitive intervention, particularly during periods where the heating is very high? And commuters have to travel because they need to get to essential locations and services, right? Finally, I would like to say that I'm coming from Accra, Ghana, in West Africa, and your research is also very important and relevant for us because in cities like Accra, where I live, many bus stops also lack shelters, and they have minimal tree cover, and are located in highly exposed environments. This means that what is identified here as a design failure, maybe in New York City, may represent a systemic condition in other locations. So your study offers us important insights for climate resilient and some low-cost transport interventions in
Yeah.
resource-constrained settings. So we can also reflect about that. Once again, thank you very much for the stimulating presentation. I look forward for the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you.
Kwame?
Yes, Nisha?
I think, have we lost Kwame?
It's okay. I can
Yes,
take
I
over.
think that's the case. So please step in, Shahan.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah, of course. We're going to continue talking about the impact of extreme weather on our mobility systems. We have our next presentation titled Impact of Extreme Heat on Travel Mode Choice for Vulnerable Demography, um, talked by Dr. Shreya Banerjee. Shreya, continue trying to share your screen while I introduce you. Um,
Thank you, Shahan.
yes.
Just let me know if the slides are visible. Yeah.
Yes, I'll let you know. Yeah, Dr. Shreya Banerjee currently is an assistant professor of sustainable urban planning at the Indian Institute of Technology at Jodhpur. She has a background in architecture, urban planning, and applied climatology. Her area of interests are heat justice, active mobility, environmental design. She's also one of our recipients for the Lee Shipper Memorial Scholarship for the year of 2025. Yeah, Shia, we can see your screen. You have 15 minutes. It's all you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shahan. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the impact of extreme heat on travel mode choice for vulnerable demography. And this research comes from my own lived experiences. So before coming to Jodhpur, I moved to Jodhpur about 2 years back. Before coming to Jodhpur, I happened to stay in all the cities which had great public transport systems. And I was very much used to with walking, bicycling, or taking a bus ride or a train ride. When I moved to Jodhpur 2.5 years back for my job, the first thing that I realized was the fact that I cannot walk. Um, Neither I could bicycle, and there was, of course, an acute scarcity of any kind of bus. So there are probably like 2, 3 buses run in the whole day. Now, the fact that I couldn't walk or bicycle was not coming from the fact that the roads were inadequately facilitated, but also from the fact that the weather was so harsh and the weather was so, different from anything that you would probably see in any other parts of the world, that it really makes your life very difficult when you go out during the day hours and when you try to walk. So this prompted me to kind of understand how the local people feel about it, because I am here very new for like last staying here for only last 2.5 years, but um, this place happens to be one of the strongly inhabited place with a lot of historical context and background since past like several centuries. It's a historic a city with a lot of history and background and such kind of things, and that's why a strong tourism angle also comes into the picture, as you can see from the image on the left side of your screen. That there are certain monuments and there is a tourist area. So, okay, let's dive into the detail of what I'm actually trying to convey. So, I wanted to understand what are the drivers, barriers, and mechanisms impacting walkability for vulnerable demographics in this particular city. And can the perception of weather impact mode choice? And when I talk about vulnerable demographic, I mostly focus on the elderly people and the other set of vulnerable populations such as women and um, just a moment. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I was trying to understand how vulnerable demography perceive the overall thermal discomfort in this particular case and how that impacts their mood choice. So, as I was earlier also explaining, it's a tourism dominant city, and there is a lot of tourist related attractions and significant local and like tourists come here and in this particular area. The city is situated in the Thar Desert region, which is situated in the western part of India, and summertime temperature goes up to almost like 50 degrees centigrade, which is like extremely hot and arid. And the city lacks pedestrian infrastructure as well as there is a very interesting socio-cultural dynamics that I started noticing after I shifted here. So women still face a lot of social stigma in this part of the country, and that also kind of hinders them from participating in any outdoor activities. And also the city really lacks any elderly specific facilities or any facilities for any other vulnerable group like especially abled or children or such kind of demographics. So I wanted to understand how to bridge the gap between weather and walking. So my focus was on three broader aspects. The first one was human health. How does your body react when you try walking in an extreme hot and arid condition? The second was the factor of transportation, how this prompts you to choose your mode. And the third one was about the public space, open space, and street design, how we can make our streets or open spaces or public spaces more comfortable while you try to walk or bicycle in an environment where the temperature goes up to 50 degrees centigrade. So the essence behind this is to understand the interaction of bioclimatic dynamics, built environment, and microscale climatic variables. So what I'm trying to indicate here is this, that one such approach tries to model unprecedentedly fine-scale spatiotemporal dynamics of human psychophysiological responses. That may sound very complicated. So let me just break it down to you all in a more simple manner. So how does your body reacts with the surrounding thermal condition, or the surrounding thermal condition impacts your thermal physiology when you walk, or it could be any other activity like bicycling? And how does the impact of street design, landscaping, and surrounding infrastructure ensure that you can walk in a thermally comfortable situation? So, what does this approach help us to achieve? So you can understand what is a thermally comfortable range for any demography. Because we all know that different age groups and different sex and different genders have like different sensitivity, and an elderly person can feel very hot, but probably a healthy adult may not feel that a strong sensation or something like that. So how does that impact, and what is the comfortable range when you can feel nice while walking? And if the outdoor environment is thermally comfortable, if the outdoor environment is prompting you to think of walking, if it's kind of incentivizing you to choose walking as a mode through maybe a comfortable, nice environment or visually nice looking places, then that also promotes active mobility, which is again going back to the first point, it's good for health. So as I was talking about the research problems, the objective of this particular project is to devise optimum thermal range for walking for demographic-specific requirements, as well as street design guidelines in compliance with the above derived thermal range. So what if I plant 20 trees? Whether I need 20 trees to feel thermally comfortable, or only 5 trees can suffice my thermal comfort requirement. So I can understand one such conclusion from the second objective of this particular project, where I try to develop street design guidelines in compliance with the above derived thermal range for various climatic categories. I'm talking about the hot and arid climate category, but one such framework can be adopted for any other climate category. So these are some of the images, as you can see. Not much of shading, widely exposed, not much of infrastructure, and very haphazard kind of urban setup. So as I was explaining, the temperature goes up to 50, 51 degrees centigrade in this part of the country. And these are these are some of the locations in the city. So if you can see my screen, you can see the expand of the city. So we kind of chose like 5 central locations in different parts of the city. So like 3 key locations right in the middle of the city activity, some commercial areas, some prominent business areas, some institutional areas, and 2 more locations during the summer, which becomes important with respect to people who commute. And these are situated in the peripheral areas of the city. So we conducted some survey So the first insight that we got from our study is this, that prior expectations about the weather for the day do not really impact the decision to walk. So between 45 to 69% women responded that it doesn't matter, whereas more than 70% elderly people responded that it doesn't matter. The second insight that we got, and this is especially important for women, that most of the women think that lack of menstrual care facilities is the biggest barrier to walking, whereas lack of shade becomes the biggest barrier to walking during extreme weather events. So in general, they feel 58 to 72% women feel that because there is not much of adequate public toilets available, not many facilities are there which takes care of the the menstrual care and such kind of hygiene in consideration. So women actually feel stigmatized to go out and participate in various activities, and that kind of hinders them from choosing walking as a mode. And then, as I mentioned, because of the lack of planning and lack of proper landscaping related interventions, there's an absolute lack of shade. And 59 to 81% women responded that, along with the fact that menstrual care facility lack is hindering them from walking, especially during the extreme weather events, lack of shade becomes the biggest barrier. Now, we did some 400 plus survey for women and 400 plus survey for elderlies. So these were questionnaire surveys supported with some microscale climate measurements using some sensors and devices. So this helped us to develop a probabilistic model, and that kind of also helped us to understand how thermal perception impacts mood choice. So if you see a table in my slide, the table talks about different type of thermal feeling. As you can see, there is neutral, there is slightly cool, slightly warm, cool, cold, warm, hot, and all of that. And the first row talks about women, the second row talks about elderly. So what does this mean? I'll just quickly explain. So for women in Jodhpur, 30 degrees Celsius is the neutral sensation where they neither feel hot nor feel cold. 22 is when they start feeling slightly cool. 13.87 is when they feel cooler, and 5.64 is when they feel cold. Similarly, if you see the hotter side, it says that the slightly warm is at 38 degree, warm is at 46 degree, and hot, like extremely hot, is 55 degree. This is significantly the scale is significantly wider than most of the scale that you found across different parts of the world in such studies. So the first thing that it shows that women in this part, the local women, they have a higher acclimatization level. So generally in other parts of the world, 18 to 23 is generally considered the neutral, but here the neutral itself is 30. So the fact that they have been staying here for so many years have already made them acclimatized to heat. But that also kind of tells us that they may feel acclimatized, but that can impact their body. Because if you see, they're feeling warm at 46 degree. 46 degree can be unbearably hot, right? We all understand from our experiences. 38 itself can be quite difficult if you are trying to walk in the outdoor condition. But here, women feel slightly warm at 38 degrees centigrade. So that actually makes them more susceptible to falling sick from heat-related exhaustion when they are trying to walk. And the worst part is this, because they are not feeling it, they're not perceiving it, they may not understand that they're actually falling sick. Whereas for elderly, the neutral temperature range is about 24 degrees centigrade, and they feel slightly warm at 30 degree, and they feel hot at 42 degree. So why I'm talking about this particular scale? Because we wanted to see how this shift in perception impacts the probability of choosing any particular mode. So when, for women, the temperature is changing from 30 degree to 5 degree, probability of choosing walking as a mode increases from 50% to 85%. And this replacement is mostly by two-wheeler usages by 30%. And when their sensation is from hot to neutral, like if the temperature is changing from 55 degree to 30 degree, the probability of women choosing walking as a mode increases from 7% to 50%. So basically, if it's very hot, women are like, there is a 7% probability that women will choose walking. If it's neutral, there's a 50% probability that women will choose walking. And if it's cold, there is a 85% probability that women will choose walking as a mode. Whereas if I talk about elderly, it says that if the weather is very hot, then elderly people are tending to choose bus as a mode of transport. And 60% of elderly people are choosing bus as their predominant mode of transport. Now, when the temperature is at about 24 degree, which is neutral, 60% of elderly people are choosing bus as a mode of transport. And then if it's cold, then 54% is choosing bus as a mode of transport. So this kind of gave us the idea that there is indeed the factor of thermal perception that is playing an important role in these people's decision of choosing any particular mode of transport, given certain conditions. So when I was talking about women, we assumed that the average age of these people are 25. So we developed a probabilistic model, and some of the factors that we fed into the model was this, that for women, we assumed the age as 25, metabolic activity as sedentary, monthly transport expenses as 1,000 Indian rupee, and they are aware of the transit infrastructure availability in the surrounding area, and they believe that their weather expectation is impacting mode decision. Whereas all the variables were same except age for elderly people, where we assume that the age of these elderly people are 65 when they are choosing, bus as the predominant mode of transport, as we obtained from our study. So what's next? We are still in the middle of, developing the recommendations and doing the analysis, because we just finished collecting the data about like 2-3 months back, and still the analysis was going on. So our next objective is to develop urban design guidelines to ensure shading and comfortable walking, street design recommendations, which conforms with the comfortable thermal range obtained from the field data, and individual heat or cold risk level assessment for women, elderly, or any other vulnerable demography for any kind of extreme weather resilient walking. So that's my presentation. I'll stop here. Over to you.
Thank you, Shreya. That was great. Like, I think it's one of the biggest challenges that a lot of places in the global south is facing, trying to tackle the climate change impact on mobility. And the intersectionality here, of course, is really important of gender and vulnerability. But I wouldn't take too much time because we have a discussant, Dr. Abiola Fagbenro, if I am saying that right. If I'm not, I'm sorry. Dr. Abiola is currently a lecturer at the School of Transport and Logistics, Lagos State University, Lagos. He holds a bachelor's degree in transport planning and management, a master's degree in transport and logistics, and he recently completed his PhD in transport logistics with a focus on public transport. Dr. Abiola also has extensive experience as a practitioner and a consultant. His research interests cross-cut urban mobility, specifically public transport, non-motorized transport, and freight logistics. Dr. Abiola, you have 5 minutes to kind of like wrap this up in it's hard to talk about this in 5 minutes, but yes, your reflections, your feedback on Shreya's work. to
very
be
much.
yeah.
I think there is a mix-up here. Am I supposed to be the discussant in respect of that last presentation? I think that was not what I was scheduled for. So in view of that, I didn't follow the presentation totally. I got the introduction so well, but along the line, I lost track of this.
Sorry, Kwame, can you confirm if we have mixed the discussants?
I doubt that because the other discussant actually requested that we move her to the last. So I'm not too sure if that might have come from our end.
Hello, sir. The title you gave me is on impact of fuel price hike and fear elasticity.
That's fine.
That was what I was discussing on this conference.
Can I suggest that we bring on, if anyone has any comments or want to add something after Shreya's fantastic presentation? That we open the floor?
Yeah, we can open the floor for 5 to 10 minutes on because the next presentation shifts a little bit away from weather events. Polycap.
Absolutely, and also I think people can keep on the chat, any questions and reflection. But I think also Dominic, since these two papers are related, what is one or two lines that you can reflect upon? Dominic, and I see some of the reflections in the chat also. Maybe Shahan, you can summarize later on. Dominic, you have anything?
Well, yeah. It was very interesting to also see what Shreya has also been looking at. And what was really striking me was the differences in the behavior of elderly people and women. When the temperature was a bit hot, the women tend to behave in a certain way. The elderly women cooled more like stomach in a way. And when it got cooler, the women were more probable to behave in a certain way that elderly people were more relaxed about. So yeah, when we are doing research, you're looking at these vulnerable groups and all that. Some of these life courses also gives us another level of understanding, right? Where in terms of aged people or elderly people behave differently or have special needs that we need to be attentive to those ones in order to also make them comfortable in their commuting journeys. That was what I really picked, and it was interesting for me. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, let's Polycap, you had something, Chibe. You had something to
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Shira. It was a wonderful presentation, and I followed it with keen interest, especially it's also a phenomenon which I also have like a personal experience with it on how heat actually impacts working as a mode of transport. And I think it's a pertinent issue that affects many other areas in the global south. I had a little worry from the beginning regarding your motivation behind vulnerable population. Maybe you could help me clarify. Based on my own experience with working, particularly in sub-Saharan African cities, I discovered that women are women account for larger shares of working compared to men, and in most cases also we tend to find elderly people working more than even younger people. So my small worry, which I was curious, and I would like you clarify on it, whether there is a specific motivation behind choosing vulnerable population. I know in most cases these are the people that sometimes suffer from planning decisions that we make, but in other cases too, especially when it comes to working, we discover that some of these people may be based on behavioral, just like you indicated in your study, that people who have the lived experience, they are used to and they tend to work more. So I was a little bit curious to find out whether, aside the fact of hurt, which you said like heat impact our bodies differently, was there a particular motivation choosing a vulnerable population? And if it was maybe across different demographic group, do you think the results that you got will be different, like maybe in terms of men, whether their behaviors will be different, and also whether have there been any noticeable variations in terms of working frequencies between different population groups? Thank you.
Well,
Do you want
thank
to
you.
quickly answer? Yes, please.
Yeah, Sean, please go ahead.
No, I was just asking if you want to quickly comment on both Dominic and
Yeah.
Jive's remarks, and then we can go to one more question of Yudia, and then we have to move
Yeah,
forward.
sure.
And then anyone else has questions, please note, and we have towards the end time to discuss more.
Sure. So, well, thank you for the questions. I think I'll first talk about the second set of questions. So, yes, indeed, there were quite a few motivations behind choosing the vulnerable demography, because firstly, as I mentioned, that when I moved to this part of the country, I saw very strong difference with respect to how women participate in social activities, or what is women's role, because still, there is a lot of barrier and gender related stigma is surrounding women's participation in different activities in this part of the country. And so that was that was the first motivation. So I wanted to understand if they have autonomy with respect to mobility when they are going outdoors, whether it's their decision or their family members' decision or something like that. So there is a very strong and complex socio-economic as well as ethno-cultural factor behind women's participation in any kind of outdoor activities in this part of the country. So that's first thing. There's a lot of gender discrimination and barriers in women's participation. And so that was the first motivation. Secondly, when so in again, like here, the clothing insulation, like what type of clothes women wear is very different from what type of clothes male wear. So that becomes like a strong factor. Like generally, like historically, women are more covered, they are under a veil, and such kind of practices are common in this part of the country. So then if you are if you are wearing a clothing ensemble which is not helping you to walk, or which is kind of acting as a barrier, because you have more layers, so you probably feel more uncomfortable compared to a man. So that's one thing. And regarding the elderly people, so there's not much of awareness about the fact that probably geriatric participation again needs some special intervention, maybe because they're like their movement becomes weak, and they may have some health conditions, so you need separate set of interventions for them to feel comfortable. That awareness is not part of the planning decisions in this part of the country. So I wanted to see if that is kind of hindering the elderly participation in public transport, or again, socio-cultural factors. There is this sense of sense of social status is existing here. So there is this notion that if you are from elevated social status, then you probably have a four-wheeler and you commute through that. and bus is more for the lower income group. So whether those things were playing an important role, because if you have higher affordability, then probably you are not going to choose walking, despite the fact that it probably has health benefits. At least that's how some of the planning decisions work in this part of the country. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Yes, it does. And I was also wondering whether if these results were to be extended to other demographic groups, would the outcome of it be different, or we may have similar outcomes here?
Yeah, so I anticipate, yeah, of course, like we collected a lot of samples. So we have, a total of, I think, some 1,600 samples in different seasons. We conducted several longitudinal studies, and we are still in the process of cleaning and analyzing that data, because it's a huge data set. Because we had questions related to thermal perception as well as travel demand and their behavioral aspects and all these things. So I anticipate that I would be able to see some stark contrasts between different age groups, different genders, as well as different economic stratification. So yeah, I mean, once the whole data set is analyzed, I'll probably have a better clarity. But whatever we have analyzed so far, it looks like there would be very different results for other demography or other age groups.
Thank you. Yulia.
Hi, thanks, Shreya, for the presentation. I'm very interested in your research. And I know you're still working on the results. I was wondering from doing this work, did you see any moderating effect of urban design considerations or what kind of design strategies you think could be most promising given the constraints of urban planning and design, right? And especially in this climate, I imagine planting trees would be difficult. What kind of strategies do you see as most promising? Or maybe it's like more about the behavioral strategies and raising the risk awareness of the risk, because it seems to me that risk perception is quite low from what you showed. And my second question was more of like my interest in your survey on how did you determine the mode preference and in relationship to the temperature.
Okay. Thank you so much for both the questions. So I'll answer the first question first. So we kind of wanted to ensure that we were capturing the socioeconomic, behavioral, and such kind of variables, and like the perception preference and such kind of variables. So whatever data we collected from whatever demographic, the location of those people were kind of uniform across all the locations. So we wanted to ensure that there is like some shaded bus stop kind of a place where they were either sitting or standing in a sedentary position for at least 15-20 minutes, and then we asked them the questions. So when we collected the data, we wanted to make sure that we were only focusing on one type of like urban morphology to kind of make sure that this will allow us to test the sensitivity of other factors. Now, when I have the data, we again so from the first year data, we did this analysis. In the second year's data, what we did, we then extended this to different type of urban forms, like areas without any shade, exposed areas, and such kind of things. Because the fact that this area is extreme hot and arid, so you can imagine that the radiative heat exchange is very high. And also the fact that there is very low moisture and there's hardly any tree cover. So, and also most of the buildings here are made out of sandstone blocks because of the fact that it's a locally available material. So then that actually creates very bad radiative heat gain in most of the open spaces. But again, because of the fact that this is a water scarce, hot and arid region, so probably plantation is not a viable option, both ecologically as well as financially. So then when we did the second round of survey, we included some of the questions, and we wanted to understand if people, because their risk perception is quite low, if they value any kind of behavioral adaptation or any kind of slight changes in their lifestyle practices or something like that. So then we realized that in this part, probably behavioral adaptation is going to play a very important role. Because like again, one thing that you would be able to see here is the fact that people are even drinking hot tea in 45 degrees centigrade. So then that awareness needs to come that it's actually causing more thermal distress to you. So rather than drinking probably a hot cup of tea, you should replenish the fluid in your body by drinking more and more water of probably normal temperature or something. So that's the first set of answer for your first question. Second, for the particular second question that you asked, so I think okay, can you please repeat the second question once again? Yeah.
Yeah, the second question is easy. It's about how you looked at determine the relationship between the mode choice and temperature. So what kind of questions did you ask?
Right. So yeah, so we had a very conventional outdoor thermal comfort survey questionnaire where we had questions of perception, preference, and all of that. Alongside that, we included some questions related to their travel behavior. It was something like and also like all these questionnaire surveys were complemented by the field measurements. So we had questions like right at this moment, if you are asked to choose a particular mode to commute from point A to point B, which mode will you choose? Questions like this were included, or there were questions like when you started from your place in the morning, did you expect today's weather to be like this? If yes, whether that impacted your decision of walking, or irrespective of the weather, you decided that no, I'm going to walk anyway. So we had such kind of questions. And we also had questions related to behavioral adaptation and some street design things like, would you prefer a wider street, or would you prefer a street with more lighting? Would you prefer a street with a better footpath, or things like that? So then we kind of, we ran some probabilistic methods. Like for this particular thing, I used a multinomial logistic regression, which kind of helped me to understand what is the probability of choosing a particular mode for like given certain conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. And thank you everyone for the questions. We're sorry about the mix-up for the discussant. We have one more, so we're going to quickly jump to that. Kwame?
Sure. Thank you very much for that. Our next presentation will be done by Paul. Paul, you can share your screen while I introduce you. Paul is a senior research fellow in the Department of Civil Engineering at Joseph Sewan Taka University in Nigeria. Currently, he is a postdoctoral research fellow in the Sustainable Transportation Research Group at the School of Engineering, University of KwaZulu-Natal, Durban in South Africa. Paul's research interests include transport planning and engineering. Paul, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Kwame. Good day, everyone. I am here to present the impact of fuel price hikes and fare elasticity of public transport in Makurdi metropolis. The outline of my presentation includes the introduction, aim and objectives, a brief review of literature, methodology, results and discussions, then conclusion and recommendation. I would like to state clearly that the work is actually ongoing. The research has not been concluded. It has not been published. Hopefully, after this presentation, any moment from now, we might work towards publishing it. but for now, it's still unpublished. The background, mobility is fundamental to both urban and rural lifestyle, as it influences the sociocultural, economic, and political well-being of people. Therefore, efficient transport system enhances livability by supporting social interaction and economic activities. Mobility challenges include high fares, poor infrastructure, accessibility, and safety. Hence, the cost of travel is significant for determining travel behavior. Fuel price is a key determinant of travel cost vis-a-vis travel behavior. It influences demand. The abrupt changes in fuel prices amplify the derived demand effect. It influences mobility pattern and equity issues. Determinant of transport cost include fare levels, service quality, travel time, safety, accessibility, and income levels. In the global south, transport systems are usually dominated by informal modes operating under weak regulations, where variations in fares significantly influence the system's dynamics. Fare elasticity, which measures the sensitivity or responsiveness of changes in transport fare, is essential to policymakers, transport operators, and urban planners. Developed worlds have established demand elasticities. Unfortunately, due to the uncertainties in developing countries, such parameters cannot be transferred to our developing nations for decision making. Hence, the need for a context-specific elasticities to enable transport planners and engineers within our region to design targeted systems with reliable management strategies. Common modes of transport, public transport in Nigeria include minibuses, tricycles, and motorcycles, also known as Okada. These modes are flexible, affordable, and they cover relatively wider spaces within the cities. Recently, the federal government of Nigeria had implemented a policy that increased fuel prices. And this witnessed a corresponding increase in transport fares, creating public outcry, which may have effect on the travel behavior. This study aims at investigating the impact of fuel price hikes on travel behavior and fare elasticity of major public transport modes in Makurdi. The objectives of the study include to examine commuters' socio-demographic characteristics and the travel behavior before and after fare increase in Makurdi metropolis. It also includes to classify the pre- and post-fuel price hike travel scenarios based on fares and mood choices using machine learning technique known as the K-nearest neighbor model. And finally, to estimate the fare and cross-fare elasticities of major public transport modes in Makurdi metropolis within the era of fuel price increase. Travel behavior studies using machine learning techniques in recent times have been recorded to be reliable. The perceived benefit of travel strongly depend on factors like fare, safety. These parameters or attributes influence travel behavior, and the use of machine learning algorithms such as KNN, decision tree, random forest, support vector and Naive-based classifiers have recorded success in recent publications. The machine learning algorithms are capable of capturing the nonlinear and high-dimensional relationship among attributes, though its challenges include overfitting and imbalanced data, mismanagement or mishandling of imbalanced data. Fare elasticities. Fare elasticity is used for formulating transport policies for efficient and sustainable transport systems. Its common variables are classified as elastic demand whenever the estimated value is greater than 1, inelastic when the estimated value is less than 1, and unilateral elastic demand when it's equals to 1. The study area is as shown. Makurdi is located within Benue State. Sorry. Makurdi is located within Benue State, and Benue State is a state within Nigeria, as shown. Your screen sharing. Screen sharing is paused. Sorry. Okay. Data collection. The instrument used for this research is questionnaire, which was administered online. The sample size, the representative population, which is the sample size, was estimated using the Teriyame formula as shown in equation 1. Data collection and analysis. The emphasis was on understanding or collecting data on socio-demographic characteristics of the respondent, which included the ages, the gender, the level of education, car ownership, employment status, and monthly income. Another class of data was travel behavior, with emphasis on mode choices, travel frequency, and daily cost of travel.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think you've paused your screen sharing. We can't see your screen right now.
Oh, sorry.
Stop and start again. Maybe that fixes the issue.
Okay. Is it okay? Is it okay now?
There we go. Yeah, your methodology right now.
Is it okay?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the observation. Okay, I had discussed data collection. I'm on data collection and analysis, which included grouping the data set into socio-demographic characteristics, which included gender, ages, level of education, car ownership, employment status, and monthly income of the respondent. Also on travel behavior with emphasis on mode choices, travel frequency, and daily total cost of travel, which were the fares. Now, machine learning algorithms were used for mining the data, and the nearest neighbor model, the K nearest neighbor model, was adopted for now because it's an ongoing research. We intend to consider other machine learning algorithms as well. The fare elasticities were based on fare elasticity of travel demand per mode, and then the cross fare elasticity across major modes. And this was also with the emphasis or with the interest, with the desire to examine the policy implications. Data analysis, which is the data mining, as earlier mentioned, the before and after scenarios, that is the before implementation of fuel price hike, and the after scenarios were classified using the KNN model. And then the fare and cross-fare elasticities were also considered, and then the strategy instruments were looked into. The performance of the K models were examined or evaluated based on the accuracy, the precision, the recall value, the F1 scores, which formulas are given as shown. Estimation of elasticity were based on fare elasticity of demand and then the cross-fare elasticity of demand. Cross-fare involves different modes, while the fare elasticity concentrates on a single mode, looking at the quantity demanded as well as the change in the price, while the cross-fare looks at the quantity demanded for a particular mode alongside a relative mode price. Results and discussion. The distribution of commuter socio-demographic characteristics is as shown, where the age limits indicates that most of the respondents fell within the ages of 16 to 25, 26 to 35, representing an active age for both the male and female, and the respondents' level of education, highest qualification were shown in figure 3, where first degree respondents with first degree and A levels of educations were constituted the most respondents, the most populous respondent. And the respondent travel frequency indicates that, figure 4 indicates that daily travels were common among the respondents, as well as 2 to 3 days per week. And the employment status also indicated that most respondents were long-term employees, and we had students and self-employees among the respondents. The machine learning classification for fares was as shown in figure 6, A and B. For A, that was the before scenario. This is a confusion matrix which shows the actual and predicted classification. These classifications are dependent on some input attributes, which included the level of education, the income, and frequency of travels, as earlier shown. The diagonal of this presentation shows the accurate predictions, where the intercept of X and Y axis, that is the actual and predicted, gives the actual prediction. The off point, the values outside the diagonal indicates predictions associated with errors. These were as a result of inconsistent input. In this case, before scenario has 11, 30, 26, 30, 45, and 149 as the accurate predictions for these fares. Why after the increase, the parameters had changed. For instance, transport fares less than 200 recorded 0, whereas before it was up to 11 respondents. These discrepancies are as a result of the influence of the fare increase. Why the diagonal remains the actual true classifications, which are the accurate. We could see 2 against 45. It shows that for a fare of 200 to 600, the response had reduced from 45 to 2, indicating the impact of the fuel price increase. The performance of this algorithm is also indicated by these slides before, indicated by figure 7, A and B, representing the before and after. We could see accuracy levels of 65.25 and root mean square error of 1.3. This performance indicates the accuracy of the classifications shown in figure 6. And the variations here justify the differences why the diagonal values are not whole, but rather have other parameters spread across the matrix. For the influence of fuel price on mode choices, figure 8A also indicates a matrix showing the diagonals which showed the actual, indicating the diagonals which show the actual classification with the highest level of accuracy, while the parameters or the entries of the diagonals were as a result of errors. It is shown that there's no significant shift in mode choices, where walking has 4 as a diagonal parameter against 5. After the incidence, we have 9 against 10. We have 68 against 63. These variations are slightly different from the before scenario, and the accuracy of these estimations is relatively high because for Okada, private cars and bikes, small buses, tricycles, except for tricycle and walking, where the classifications are slightly below 50% on a scale of 1 to 0, 0 to 1 rather. But the before scenario has relatively high accuracies. Fare elasticities, the evaluation or estimation of fare elasticities is as shown in table 1, where the buses experienced a fare increase of 200%, while the tricycles experienced a fare increase of 250, and Okada experienced a fare increase of 300%. The unchanged demand from the data, the data collated showed that the unchanged demand for buses was up to 91%. The unchanged demand in this case referred to commuters who maintained buses as their mode choices. A slight difference occurred where some commuters splitted to tricycle and Okada as well as walking. Walking is cheap. It attracts no cash cost. So it has a relatively higher value compared to Okada. Okada has a less value because it's actually, in reality, Okada is usually more expensive compared to buses. Tricycles are slightly above buses, but they could attract few changes, few demands. Tricycle relatively is usually higher than the buses. So the distribution is as shown. And then for the Okada, which recorded 300% increase, had an unchanged demand of 86%, with a few persons changing from Okada to buses, about 6%, while 6.73 changed from Okada to tricycles, as shown. Walking retained with just few changes. These discrepancies are due to some few abnormalities, and this classification, the elasticities were classified as being inelastic for the three major modes. Now, for the cross-fare elasticity, which looks at the relationship between modes, as changes in one mode affect the demands for the price of another mode affects the changes, the prices of one mode affecting the demand for the other. So for bus to tricycle, there was a fare increase of up to 50%, and the change in demand was up to 3.75, and it recorded inelastic demand. Bus to Okada recorded 200, and all these parameters indicated inelastic demands. Inelastic demand is simply defined as a demand that does not respond significantly to changes in the prices. Results and discussion. The age distribution of respondents cut across the male and female, adolescents and adults, constituting at least a total of 80% of the population, which denoted a reliable representation. About 29 and 51% of the respondents achieved bachelor's, that is first degree, and A-level educational qualification with no teenager at the primary school level, indicating a learned representation as a sample size. Over 65% of the respondents traveled daily, and more than 20% traveled at least 2 to 3 times a week, indicating a social and economically active group of respondents. Students and long-term employee also constituted the highest number of respondents. Figure 6 presented a confusion matrix indicating significant variations in transport fares between the before and after travel scenarios, with a noticeable increase in cost ranging from 2,110 to 2,000 and 2,000 and above 2,000, which was influenced by the fuel price hike. The performance metrics of the classification using the KNN model indicated moderate results in terms of estimated accuracies and root mean square errors. Figure 8 indicated that there was no significant modal shift despite the increase in fares established in Figure 6. This was attributed to constrained affordability and unwillingness to change mode due to relatively high fares. Figure 9 also indicated a statistically moderate classification performance of the KNN model, with only a few classes, like the tricycle walking mode of the pre- and post-price hike analysis, indicating poor performance, which was attributed to scarce data points and mismatching input parameters. Table 1 showed that demand for public transport modes in Makurdi metropolis, which included buses, tricycle, and Okada, were inelastic in response to the fare increase. Table 2 also assumed a similar trend, indicating inelastic value for the cross-fare elasticities of demand for buses, tricycle, Okada, which conformed with the result in Table 1. In conclusion, there was a significant increase in public transport fares, which was attributed to the fuel price hike policy implemented by the Nigerian federal government. The social demography of commuters indicated a reliable representation of this study. Representation for the study. The pre- and post-fuel price hike classification of fares and mode choices indicated increased fares with relatively low modal shift, suggesting that commuters were unwilling to adjust their mode choices in response to fare increase, thereby subjecting them to greater financial or economic hardship. The inelasticity of demand for public transport in Makurdi metropolis The inelasticity of demand for public transport in Makurdi metropolis implied that fuel price increased by the government of Nigeria, which in turn led to increased fares, insignificantly affected ridership in terms of modal shift in Makurdi metropolis. Based on the findings, transport policy in Makurdi metropolis should be, the following recommendations are made. Based on the findings, the following recommendations are made. Transport policy in Makurdi metropolis should encourage walking, a relatively inexpensive mode, yet to gain wide acceptance despite the increase in fares, which has subjected commuters to higher daily expenses. The regulation of fuel price should be guided by commuters' income and welfare packages like subsidies to minimize the impact of high fares on commuters, affecting travel behavior since there is noticeable resistance to modal shift. Alternatively, public transport in Makurdi metropolis should be provided by the government with efficient management strategies in terms of accessibility, safety, availability, comfort, and at relatively low cost to enhance affordability and improve reliability. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that insightful presentation. Certain issues relating to fuel hikes and mobility is quite familiar to many of us in Africa, and I'm happy you've shed light on this important topic. Our discussant for Paul's presentation is Edna. Edna is an assistant lecturer at the Egerton University and a sustainable transport engineering consultant at UN Habitat. She has 10 years of experience in transport, energy, and climate change. Edna focuses on advancing sustainable mobility solutions, particularly the transition to electric mobility in Africa, and support research and policy initiatives that promote cleaner, more inclusive transport systems while strengthening stakeholder engagement and capacity building. Edna, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Kwame. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Paul. It was really lovely reading your research and just diving deep into it to understand the situation in Nigeria. What was really interesting also reviewing this research was that it came at a very timely situation, because I think at the moment fuel price is quite the topic in most countries, because there's been a lot in terms of the global crisis with fuel prices. So it was really nice to get to see your perspective on what's happening in Nigeria in terms of fuel price hikes. I also like to comment that you did go ahead to incorporate machine learning in your study. I was really hoping it would have featured even in the title. It would have been nice for people to know that you are having a mix of transport economics and machine learning as analyzing the fuel price hikes. So maybe aside from that, I would just also like to comment the amount of data that you incorporated in the model, because I saw that you did incorporate most of the vital social, demographic, and economic features that are necessary to determine how people decide their travel mode choice. So that was really commendable. Maybe just a comment that I wanted to make about the study was, I did a research and found that Makurdi has 5 400,000 people. So that is the total population of Makadi. And in your research, you did mention that the 400 was a representation of 472,000, meaning the 400 respondents were supposed to be a representation of the whole of Makadi. So I kind of thought that was a bit biased in terms of the research, because I felt like the sampling didn't wholly represent Makadi as a metropolis, because finding out that it's inelastic based on only 400 respondents, and this was an online questionnaire study, meaning that most of the people had their tech savvy. So what about the people that didn't have access to the online questionnaire? What are their feelings about the fuel price hikes in Makadi? So that was something that I really wanted to find out. And I think also because of the number, 400, you ended up having less data sets. And for machine learning, we all know that the more the data sets, the better the results that you get in terms of understanding the behavior of the people with the fuel hike price. So I just wanted to point that out. And then another thing that I had wished to see probably was other scenarios beyond walking. It would have been nice if you explored CNG as an option. If CNG was an option in the in terms of a fuel, would that make people, would the prices of public transportation go lower if you had an alternative fuel other than just depending on petrol and diesel? And also, what about electrification? At the moment, we are seeing a lot of electrification happening. Even in Nigeria, you are transitioning the 2- and 3-wheelers. So what about that? How does that also implicate how does that affect the choice of mode by these people in terms of movement? So those are some of the things I had wanted to also see you maybe exploring in other scenarios. Another issue that I felt like didn't come out properly also was, I would have loved to see you tell us the distances being covered by these people, because I feel like people choose their modes of transport based on the distance. So in the recommendations, you're recommending walking, but then we are not sure what distances are they walking, you know, because if someone is choosing to use the bus, the Okada, or the tricycle, they're choosing to use it based on, it could be journey time, yes, but also what distance are they being covered? Is walking an option for that distance? So that maybe the option could be like a BRT system that is electrified, because that would be more feasible and affordable, because one of the recommendations was affordability, safety, security, and then also you had a good representation of female and male. But then in the scenarios, it would have been nice to see how women select their modes based on the fare increase versus the men, because you already had data showing the disaggregation. So it would have been nice to also see that. Yeah, and also now that the conversation started with weather conditions, how does weather condition and fuel price also meet together in this whole scenario? Because I would still go for a car even if the price is high, because I'm more keen to ensure that I get
Hello?
Hello, Edna?
No?
I think we lost her.
I think we lost her. All right, sure. I'm sure, Paul, you had great insights from Edna's presentation. We virtually have 15 minutes to end today's session, and we want to open the room for Q&A sessions involving all the three presenters. So you can either raise your hand or use the message box to, drop your message, and we'll do well to read them out for the presenters to answer. So let's hear your questions.
We do have, I think, 2 questions in the chat already. If you want to start.
Okay, so Paul, this is from Dominic, and he says, you made a recommendation that encourage walking. Is there a friendly walking environment in that area? Is it safe to walk? And 3 questions. Is there a friendly walking environment in that area? And is that environment safe enough for people to walk? Then maybe we'll take the third one after. Hello, Paul.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I think there is an omission, because there should be a walking friendly environment before walking should be recommended. But because it was not examined in this research, emphasis was not really laid on the infrastructural aspect, but there should always be a walking friendly facility before walking can be recommended or implemented. Noted. I think that should be noted for the policy study. Yeah.
Okay. So Dominic again. He says, since the increase in fuel prices insignificantly changed the ridership behavior of communities, what were their major and minor coping strategies? Did you get opportunity to find out?
Yeah, I think the strategies were not really pointed out, but based on their responses, it indicated that they rather subjected themselves to economic hardship, some economic constraint, trying to cope with the increase. Because the parameters, the data indicated that there was no significant shift. Looking at the matrices, the before and after, though there's room for errors because the performance of the model recorded some level of errors, which shows that the classifications may not be accurate 100%, but holistically it showed that commuters rather subjected themselves to some form of financial constraint to see how they could cope with the increase in fares, retaining their mode choices with little shift, with little percentage of shift from one mode to the other, as shown by the data. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Polycarp says, interesting presentation, Dr. Paul. You talked about social demographic groups. I was wondering whether the model predicted the impact of fuel prices across these social demographic groups. This may help better inform your target recommendations.
Okay. Yes. Looking at these figures, I don't know if my screen is still sharing.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Looking at this figure, looking at figures 2 and 3, the confidence of this analysis were laid on this because the age limit showed from 16 to 35, which is classified as the active age group within our societies. Then the level of education also showed that most respondents had at least A levels with first degrees. These are also the drivers of our economy within this age level of education. So the conviction was that having a significant number of respondents within this age limit and level of education, these findings are reliable to some extent. They are reliable to a great extent. I don't know if I've answered your question.
The floor is still open. We have just about 5 more minutes to end the session. If you have questions for the other two presenters, please feel free. Raise your hand or you can drop it in the message box. We'll be kind enough to read them out. Okay. Abiola, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for that presentation that is timely. And I really like his presentation, though the areas I feel it will have improved upon. And one of my major concerns is that the issue of fuel price hikes, I think in Nigeria and Makurdi inclusive, has happened over time. Which of the fuel price hike precisely is did he consider? Because I would want to say there are some some fuel price hikes that are major, while some are gradual or not too significant. That is my first question. Then the other question I'm concerned about is that the issue of using machine learning algorithm, it's good, but for a place like Makurdi, I don't know the extent of coverage it will be able to get to the commuters in terms of the exact people that are using public transport. Possibly, if you can afford to have a mobile phone, you have your internet to fill out the form, most likely you will be comfortable enough to afford your personal car. So then what is the criteria to make sure that these people filling this form, this online questionnaire, were users of public transport? Because I think I am an advocate of public transport. Anything that will make people use public transport, I am interested. That is my little concern about the presentation. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for the comment.
Can I respond?
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Abiola, for the question. I really appreciate that. Unfortunately, I did not display the mode choice frequency table, which showed the number of individuals using private cars, the demand for buses, the demand for Okada, and all that on daily basis. I think if I had displayed that plot, it should have shown you the percentage, the proportion of respondents using private cars and buses and Okadas on daily basis more frequently. I think that was an omission. Then regarding the distribution of the modes or travel pattern within the Makurdi metropolis. Makurdi metropolis is an area that has about two universities within the city center and some polytechnics as well as secondary schools. So on daily basis, there's usually a shared distribution or a fair distribution of modes where you have buses with their defined routes. I think my discussant mentioned about the distances. There are some bus routes, though these buses do not have a specific, they are not well coordinated, but they have some specific distances they cover from the origin to destination. So the buses usually ply along these routes on daily basis, to and fro. So it is certain that movement between point A to B, you have the option of using a bus, or if you own a car, you could use that. So I don't know, but in terms of bus routes, it's clearly defined. The buses usually move, and the network is such that it covers the entire metropolitan area of Makurdi. So it's clearly defined. The buses are clearly defined. If I had provided a map to indicate the bus route, you could see that bus routes are spread across the metropolitan area of Makurdi.
All right. Thank you for that response. I think we can take one more question for Sharia, and it comes from Abdul Rahman. He says, I would like to ask Sharia whether the other variables that affect mode choice are considered alongside climate, and what level of contribution do these other factors have on mode choice, especially walking? Are you with us? Sharia? Okay, maybe we could forward this to her. Shahan, any last word?
No, I'm looking at the names to see if she's here, but maybe not.
She is still signed in, and I asked her to activate her microphone, but I think that she might not be attentive
Hi,
here.
Karin. Am I audible?
Good.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Freya.
There was a bit of issue going on at my end with the audio. So yeah, I mean, I just, I was unable to unmute myself. Yeah.
Did you get the question?
No, as I mentioned, there was a bit of, issue going on with the audio. So I missed some part. Yeah.
Okay, sure. I can repeat the question for you. Okay, so the question is, did you consider other variables that affect travel mode aside climate? And what level of contribution do these other factors have on mode choice, especially walking?
Yeah. So I think I considered different type of socio-economic variables as well as variables related to affordability. So we did consider most of the variables that are generally used in traditional mode choice models. Something like what is origin, what is destination, what is travel time, what is the distance that you are planning to travel, what is the purpose of the travel, if it's for work trip or if it's for a leisure trip or things like that. And we did consider factors related to the economic affordability, something like what is your monthly expenses, what is your monthly travel related expenses, how much extra are you willing to pay just in case we ask you to pay a money for infrastructure upgradation or something like that. Are you willing to pay a small maintenance fee or things like that? So those questions were also included, as well as there were different questions related to the behavioral factors. Like how often do you travel? What are the difficulties that you face while traveling? As a woman, if you are facing difficulties related to safety, security, and any other gendered issues or things like that.
Thank you very much for that response. I'm sure we can continue the conversation in our WhatsApp platform. Please do well to continue the conversation there. We'll take our closing remark from Karin.
It's with great pleasure and honor that I've been here listening to all the great presentations and seeing so many of you from all over the globe joining us today. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us. And I wrote in the chat that if you haven't already, please sign up for our newsletter and follow the VREF Next Gen Initiative, so you will have all the news and invitations for events and activities. So thank you so much, Kwame and Shahan, for excellent moderating today.
Thank you so much. Nolmark, any last word? Henrik?
I can only echo Karin and thanking you so much for a terrific webinar. It's been very rich in insights and questions and comments. So yeah, it's been a good afternoon here for me. And looking forward to the next one. Do we have a date yet for the next one, or will that come later?
That will come later.
Okay.
It's
Stay tuned.
first half of June, but the date would be announced formally.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much for coming
everyone.
here.
Thank you.
We'll see you in June. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.